To the WCIA 3 Coaches Roundtable. We have got 4 high school football coaches joining us tonight for this digital-only discussion as we wrap up the 6-week COVID-19 shortened season and look ahead to hopefully what is a quote-unquote normal, whatever that means nowadays, 2021 fall season with playoffs and the 9-week schedule. Here's our panel for tonight. Gibson City head coach Mike Allen, Cumberland head coach Lucas Watkins, Mahomet-Seymour head coach Jon Adkins, and PBL head coach Josh Pritchard. Guys, I want to just get your take here because you guys all had different seasons. There were some pauses for some of you. Others played undefeated seasons like you, Lucas, down at Cumberland. Mike, we'll start with you. How do you wrap up what this season was and what it meant to your team and your players?
Just getting back on the field together. Our conference only played 4 games, so it was nice to get those games in, be able to kind of review and plan for next year, but also to honor and take time to show respect for those seniors who didn't get a full season this year. And, we had our last game at home, and that was a nice way to finish off with senior night and to conclude the season there at home with the guys.
Lucas, what about for you and your team? You go 6-0 and, win the Lincoln Prairie Conference. That's a positive for that, but records aside, what did it mean to be on the field this year and participate and get a season after so many of us thought that wasn't going to happen?
Yeah, it was really great. I was kind of the same boat you were, and a lot of coaches around the state, not even knowing if we were going to get any games. We were very, very fortunate. We were able to get all six games in for us, and like Coach Allen said, it was great to get out on the field and get those seniors a little bit of closure in the season. So it was we're just really grateful and thankful we got to play in a game, let alone 6 of them.
Yeah, John, you guys go 3-3. You're able to get all 6 games. And what was the momentum and roller coaster ride like for your team this year?
Man, I would say it was uncharted territory for sure. Just the dealing with spring break, right? Like we've never had a season where we've had spring break right in the middle of it. And then making assigned seats on the bus. I mean, we could go on and on for days about the list of things that were so new to us this year as football coaches that we've never had to experience in probably most of our careers. But like the other guys said, just the chance to get out there and be on the field, and get some sort of playing. Like you said, we were very lucky to get all 6 in. I also think we would have been really happy with just one opportunity to send those seniors out the right way and then to get some of our young kids some experience. It was definitely crazy, but an awesome season.
And Josh, you guys go 3-1. You missed the first week of the season, and then you missed the last week of the season. Take me through that process, not only from you as the head coach and having to tell the kids, but what you thought the kids took from all of that. That's tough news to not play the first one when you're looking forward to that so much, and then obviously have the last one taken away from you.
Yeah, it was a little crazy because our basketball team wins the regular season conference title, and then the next day they find out that they've got a positive case, so that knocks out like 15 of my football players. So they go from not being able to play in their conference tournament to not playing week 1, and then they weren't back in time to play week 2 either. So week 2 we played with like 15 or 16 backups. So to have the short season was a bummer, but like I said, we got some games in. I know that the kids are disappointed they didn't get to play more games, but in the end, some games are none. I think some of them are at least happy to get out there, and when we got all of them back, they definitely showed that they were willing to play football, whether there was a playoff in the future or not.
What did you take away from this season in that? Because, as coaches, you guys have these huge expectations. Obviously, you want your team to succeed. How much did you have to scale back what you were doing or just kind of put it all in perspective of what this was?
Yeah, I know we definitely scaled back a lot of our hitting in practice. We knew that kids were going to come in out of shape, whether they play basketball or not. So we knew that soft tissue injuries were a possibility. So we definitely did a lot more stretching and stuff, just focusing on the basics with that. And then, we really didn't do as much film studies we do in the past, mainly because we wanted our kids just to go out and do what we do. And, if that was good enough to win the football game, that's what we were going to do. We knew we had a super young team, and, we returned basically 15 or 16 starters in the fall. So we just wanted to get those kids as many reps as possible.
What about for you, Lucas? Because you guys were so good this year. I'm sure winning fueled that, right? But did you have to scale some things back, or was it as much as you would do in a normal fall?
For the most part, we did most of what we normally do. Like Coach said, we didn't probably hit as much as we normally did. A lot of times you want to talk about goals and everything, with the playoffs and that kind of stuff. And that kind of had to go to the wayside. But we just kind of focused on one game at a time and playing as good as we could each week. And we are a relatively young team as well. We had 4 seniors, and 2 of those got hurt before the season even started. So we played the whole season with 2 seniors. So we going in, we kind of wanted to treat it kind of like a college coach, like spring football, and getting prepared for the fall. But we ended up kind of having some success with those younger kids. So definitely something to build on for next year.
Was the carrot different? Because like you said, I mean, for so much of at least what I think of for high school football, you're playing to go 9-0. You're playing to win a conference championship. You're playing to get to the playoffs. Ultimately, that's what you want, because everyone has that dream of making a deep playoff run. Did that change at all, or did the kids respond to that perspective piece of like, hey, we know what this is, so to speak?
I just think, again, it goes back to the one game at a time thing, and just be, thankful and grateful for every opportunity you're going to get. Like I said, we had the 2 seniors that got hurt before the season even started. So that kind of showed the other kids that, this season can be taken away from you. Our basketball team got play suspended because of COVID. So really just the fact that we were able to get out there and, knowing that could be taken away at any time, I think was motivation enough for our kids.
Mike, did you guys have any COVID concerns throughout the year, and how did you manage that as an AD? Because I can just not even begin to picture really what that's like, as the lead of not only your football program, but then also all of the athletic programs at the school. How did you balance all of that?
Football, we never had any issues. The last week of the season, I had 2 calls and kids were sick, and you're thinking, oh, we're going to miss last week, and senior night. But they came out, it was not COVID. They both were negative. As an AD, we had our boys basketball team had 5 out of their 7 top players probably out the first 3 weeks of the season due to COVID. Some of our girls basketball players got it. That's tough. And I explained to people, that's been one of the toughest jobs, to walk into a classroom first day of a girls basketball game and tell a senior basketball player that she's out for 2 weeks because she sat next to someone that, tested positive. That's a horrible feeling, and that's not enjoyable at all. We haven't had to do that much lately, so hopefully, we're getting towards the end of this. But, with the COVID, you have to follow all the policies. Make sure no one's drinking out of the same water. We're wiping things down. We have, Coach said, keeping the bus schedules and seating charts and different things like that. And with everything changing. Not just day to day, but there's been times this past summer where things changed 2 hours later. You and I talked, on the phone a couple of times. It just continually the change, and trying to keep up with that was probably the most difficult part, and trying to coach at the same time.
What's the thing that maybe surprised you about all of this, if you can narrow it to one thing, or the thing that you were pleasantly surprised about, could go bad or good, just trying to deal with all of this playing football this year?
Honestly, the thing that didn't surprise me is we should have played in the fall, and we could have played and dealt with the same thing, hit and miss. Some teams would have probably missed in some games, but we would have dealt with it in the fall. I don't think nothing surprised me. I learned that quick, not to be shocked by anything. The good thing is you see the character of your kids when you go through this. As coaches, we always talk about how we are going to react when we face adversity, and our kids face adversity all year, and we're seeing how they're reacting. And as coaches, I think we have to be proud of them. They showed up to play football games. They showed up to practice, knowing that there wasn't that carrot at the end. And that, didn't surprise me, but it was a pleasant happiness to see how the kids have reacted during this time.
John, what did you take away from that and the perspective piece from your group? A relatively new coach at Mahomet, just your second year, right? You're trying to build a program, and yet here you are faced with all of this that you would have never even expected. Another obstacle as you try and bring Mahomet-Seymour back to maybe the level that so many expect it to be.
Yeah, no doubt. And I told, I had a couple buddies that were first-year head coaches going through this, and I told them, I said, I couldn't imagine being a first-year head coach taking over a program dealing with this. At least, like you said, I had a year under my belt, so I knew the majority of the kids. The kids kind of knew both of our systems. But yeah, you're exactly right. Trying to continue to build a program and then getting this curveball thrown into the mix. I'm so grateful for the coaching staff and the players that we had this year to be able to adapt and overcome everything that was thrown at us. we did some things differently than we wouldn't have done in the past, and certainly we won't do in the future. Something as simple as keeping the freshmen completely separate. We've never done that before and probably won't ever do it again, but we also had the mindset of if we lose one team, we don't want to end up having to potentially lose both. We fully two-platoon this year of kids on offense and defense for the same thing and that contact tracing reason. Just hoping that, maybe we wouldn't lose our whole team and just lose maybe a select few if it came down to that. But like I said earlier, some of the things that we had to do that we normally wouldn't do or certainly won't do moving ahead, hopefully when we get back to normal, made things, extremely challenging this year.
I find that interesting on the platoon. So that was all the time, practice and in games? Like you didn't run any two-way players?
No, we ended up having one kid. He played wide receiver, and then he was kind of a spot backup running back for us. And that was because of depth at that position. But again, we brought up two freshmen and not only dressed them, but they both started varsity for us. And in my 15 years of coaching, I've never even brought a freshman up to the varsity level, let alone started them. So again, we did some crazy things this year, but it was all in retrospect of trying to keep everybody getting the chance to play the game. But then certainly we can look back on it now and say, we just got a bunch of young kids, a ton of varsity reps. And that's only going to make us better for next year and then the years to come.
I often think communication is so important in whatever we do and whatever facet of life we're in. But Josh, how important was that with you and just trying to keep your team together when there was so much, I'm sure, I don't want to say confusion because that doesn't necessarily, seem like the right word there, but, uncertainty maybe with where you guys were going, if you were playing, if you were practicing that day and how that looked?
Yeah, I mean, we always complain about technology, but technology was actually kind of great here because, whether it's Google Classroom, Twitter, texting, anything that you can get a hold of those kids. Because like Coach Allen said earlier, the changes were literally coming every other hour. We may think that at noon we're going to be able to practice, and then all of a sudden at 1 o'clock we got two kids that have cases, and we got to shut down our program for a couple of days, which is what happened. So just to get that communication where you don't have kids showing up or parents that think they're supposed to be dropping off kids or picking up kids at certain times, and those times have changed. So, it was definitely crazy, but, luckily our kids adapted, and they're pretty good with technology too. So it's pretty nice to be able to put it on different platforms and for them to be able to find that quickly. But we knew that as coaches, and we told them that here's our schedule, but I'm telling you, this is not what it's going to be by the end of the year. So luckily they were able to adapt. Or
by the end of the day, sometimes I would imagine too, yeah. what that probably looked like. Did you guys watch film online? Like Illinois is doing that, with their meetings, all digital, all that kind of stuff. How did you guys handle just meetings and watching film and all that kind of stuff?
I mean, Huddle's great. We could do a little bit in the off season. I really didn't want to mess with them too much because I knew they were trying to worry about a lot of other things. But no, I mean, when we did our typical Mondays and Saturdays all together in a room. Unfortunately, luckily nobody tested positive during the season when it came to that. But you just kind of spread out, and like Coach Adkins said, we kind of split up and took the freshman or the JV team kind of away from us when we could, so that we could have the least amount of people in there as possible, and hope try to mitigate that, because the last thing you want is as a kid that doesn't dress varsity to knock out the whole entire varsity football team.
Yeah, and there were some rule changes, right? Like kids couldn't play, and maybe this isn't new, I don't know, but like especially at the end of the year there, if you had a JV game, let's say, and a varsity game, and John, you're bringing a kid up or whatever that may be, they're limited on how much they could play, right? How much did that, like, okay, well, John, you guys especially, like, we're running up the score here, but what am I supposed to do here with the kids? Like, was that an option, or was that a hurdle at all?
It's funny that you bring that up, because that exact same situation happened to us. We played Taylorville in that week 6 game, the varsity on Friday night, and then we had to turn around and play that JV game on Saturday morning at Taylorville, and we ran into that exact same situation. Ended up having a good night for us at the varsity level on Friday night, and scored several points, but couldn't put in subs. And obviously, I guess, it being senior night, we want to leave the seniors in and last game of the year. So guests didn't necessarily need to make subs. But we also couldn't make subs because those kids who were our normal subs had to go play in that JV game on Saturday morning and had to step foot on the field Friday night, they would have lost a quarter for that Saturday game, and we definitely didn't want to do that. So yeah, it did make things very difficult, of who could get in on Friday night and who couldn't because of that game on Saturday.
Lucas, I'm curious from your perspective if the game was any different this year. Like, okay, we know football is football, right? But on Friday nights, at least from my perspective, showing up to schools all across the area, it seemed like normal. Was that your perspective as well?
Yeah, I think for the most part it was. I think the biggest thing was just the off season, not having that off season, not having the reps and then lifting. And I mean, we got some of it, but if you guys remember what the summer was like, it was you can have a ball this week, you can't have a ball. So really, we didn't get a lot of time in with that. And then we were able to do some stuff there in the winter, but it's not your typical, off season that you had. So, and I'm sure the other coaches, your install was way behind and you were just kind of learning on the fly, as the game went on. So as far as watching the game, I don't think it was that big of a difference, but as far as coaching it was very, very different.
So with that being said, what worked well for you with that limited off season, especially in the summer and fall, to be able to go out and have so much success this year?
I think just kind of working on the basics when you were given time and maybe not getting too crazy with your install and keeping things basic early on and then building, throughout the season, adding some stuff, here and there. And maybe the kids were able to master that stuff, in game time situations. So I think that was beneficial for us.
Which is interesting to me because I'm always like, especially at the college game, it's like, okay, well, we got 15 different variations of this play and this, and the playbook is this thick and everything else. And like, well, all that is not inherently bad. Sometimes I'm watching, and I cover Illinois, so I'm watching Illini games in the past, and I'm like, why are you changing things, right? Like, just keep it simple. And I admire high school football coaches so much of the time that do just that. If a play works, just run it, right? Like, we don't have to have 15 variations of that. Did you take away anything from that this season that maybe you'll use going forward, that the fundamentals are just as important as having 6 different options or trip sets or, looks for this same type of play?
Yeah, I think that's kind of a catch-22 though, because you can have teams are going to adjust, if they know what you're going to run, they're going to adjust. But if you can do it, you're going to do it and do it well. You can have success. I take a look at the state champions, and a lot of times those guys from the north are running foot-to-foot double wing, and that's all they run, and throw 5 pass plays. So if it works, if it's not broke, don't fix it. As far as we're concerned, I think, moving forward, I'm kind of like you said, you can run the same play, from different sets and different formations. And that's kind of what we were able to get into there at the end of the season. And I think we had some success with that. So that's something we can build on for next year.
What about the rest of you guys? Did you change anything else of what you did or how you did it, specifically playbook-wise, or keeping the fundamentals?
Yeah, I mean, I know we put our playbook in the fall when we had those contact days, and we basically gave them our whole entire playbook and said, this is what we're going to do. Now, I think our offensive scheme isn't the hardest, especially our pass game scheme, to learn, so that kind of helps out. I will say our underclassmen were probably behind compared to where they would be in a normal year, though, for sure, because they didn't get as many reps probably as what they normally would get, especially in July. But, yeah, we kind of did what we did, and, we had some pleasant surprise kids that we didn't expect to be as good as they really ended up being. So that was kind of nice. But, yeah, we kind of threw the whole entire thing at them.
We don't have a lot of plays on our offensive side anyway, just different formations. But fundamentals is what hurt us. You have routines, you have things that you always follow, schedule, and we got out of that routine. And there was one day, luckily, Coach Adkins said earlier about spring break, we took a whole day and just did fundamentals. We didn't do any team stuff. It was all fundamentals, 10-minute breakdowns of fundamental drills for 2 hours. And that really made a difference for us getting back to that stuff because we didn't have as much time in practice as we normally would.
And this is where I'm curious going forward here now, guys, because you said the underclassmen are going to be affected by this. And I think that's where my thoughts go forward now is in 2 years, what are your freshmen going to be like that maybe would have contributed as a junior, but they only got 2 or 3 freshman games or, that experience is just not there because there wasn't as much practice time. How do you see this playing out maybe just as soon as later this fall, but then later on as well as we move forward here in the next couple of years and the result of the pandemic?
Yeah, I know it was hard. We had a small freshman class anyways, and we knew that was coming. But I'll tell you, it was a lot harder to try to go recruit those freshmen. I wasn't able to have an 8th grade meeting. I don't know if the other coaches were, but because normally our meeting was probably April-ish, and we were already out of school, stuck in remote learning. So that's kind of hard to meet some of those kids that I don't see any other time, with just getting done with my first year as well too at PBL. So that was difficult. And then we only played 4 JV games, rather than the 5 or 6 that some of these other schools were able to play. So we had limited playing time, and the fact that we weren't able to have a freshman team because we had smaller numbers, some of those kids didn't get the playing time that they normally would get and the reps that they would normally get. So you hope that even though they didn't get to play a ton, that they still want to come out their sophomore year, because that's a pretty big jump from freshman football to JV football. So we hope that we get them out, and then we hope that they can continue to get better, and hopefully we have a much more normal summer where we can get them a lot more reps in July.
So, Josh, you guys didn't have a freshman team at all?
We did not. I mean, we knew we only had 12 freshmen coming out to start off our season. We ended the season with 9. I think most programs will tell you they lose 1 or 2 along the way that realize maybe football is not for them, and we had a couple that did that. So we knew we were going to have a freshman football team going into the season, but we thought that maybe we'd have a few more JV games that we could get them in or something like that. But when COVID starts hitting, we lose our first varsity and first JV game. Then we're not able to play the last varsity and JV game, so that kind of throws us off right there.
Yeah. What about the rest of you guys? Did you guys have freshman JV, or is that even what you guys would normally have?
Yeah, we were very fortunate that we were able to field all 3 levels this year, and actually got in all 6 games at all 3 levels. So again, I think, to answer your question about moving forward, I think that's certainly a benefit for us in our program, with those freshmen, kind of staying up to speed, so to speak, because they have those game reps. And then our coaching staff does a great job at all 3 levels of not only getting those kids prepared to play in that game, but also learning and bettering our overall offensive and defensive systems. So again, very fortunate, because I know my email would blow up on a constant daily basis about, games getting canceled and teams looking for games. It seemed like by the minute, but we were very fortunate to be able to play all those games at all 3 levels.
Lucas, what about you guys? A smaller school, comparatively to someone like Mahomet, did you guys field all 3?
No. We're a 1A school, and we have 274 kids total in our school. I think I ended the season with 29 kids on our roster. So we played JV games on Monday, and there were some JV games where it was, we're dressing 14, 15 kids, just to get by. But we were fortunate to get our 5 JV games in. And that's the way most of these teams are around, these 1A. We got a couple 2A teams, but most of the kids, play on the JV game on Monday night. There's no freshman game on Saturday. And usually teams are bringing, I think the most I saw was maybe, 20, 22 kids on a Monday night JV game.
Yeah, and that's the different perspective that I kind of wanted. You're a smaller school, and it's just a lot different than a 5A school like Mahomet, and that's what I was curious with that perspective. You felt good, though, about even just getting 5 games in at a JV level. Yeah,
it was great, because there were times, with injuries and ineligibilities. I think that one game we had 14 kids, and one's a kicker, so you don't even count him. That's all he does. So we had 13 kids out there. If a kid gets hurt, and we had to have, we're putting running backs in at guards. We didn't have enough linemen there for that one game, and it's just 1A football, and you just get used to it, and you just adjust and adapt. And that's the testament to still be able to have that success. Mike, what about you guys at GCMS?
We haven't had freshmen for about 6 years. Our JV team was freshmen and sophomores. They only played 3 games. We didn't play that final game after our varsity game. And but the last game, varsity, we dressed everyone. Everyone got in the game, got some playing time there. So I think the experience that those freshmen got this year, even late in the school year, a lot of them have matured and were able for us at a small school to compete against upperclassmen and practice. And I think they'll get a lot out of this season.
But will that hurt you in a couple of years, or even next year, that they only played 3 games compared to what it would have normally been in 9?
Hopefully not. We'll see. We'll see. But they're going to be healthy coming into the fall, most of them. So that's going to be a plus. But with our youth football program, that we run a lot of the same things a high school runs. So they're used to the system, so the system won't be affected as far as learning the plays and things like that.
And that leads me to my next big question in all of this is, how does it look different in the fall? Because we're starting this summer sports season now with baseball, softball, girls soccer. You know, small schools, certainly with you, Lucas, and even PBL, you know, I would consider that somewhat like a smaller school. You have overlap. How do you balance all these contact days in the summer and what that's going to look like come fall when practice is starting here the second week of August?
We do a good job, you know, working with the other coaches and making sure we're not overlapping days. I've got my summer schedule pretty well done already. And I know we're just going to lift early in June and not do, you know, the kids. I might have 4 kids in there in the weight room, you know, because everybody's doing, you know, the baseball, track, wrestling. So we will start our, you know, contact days, team stuff about the 3rd week of June. So those first 2 weeks will just, you know, be lifting for the football only kids. Like I said, there'll just be a handful of kids there, and got some 7-on-7 scheduled. And I just hope that here before too long, you know, we can get rid of the mask and everything gets back to semi-normal.
What about the rest of you guys? How does it affect this fall and this summer, maybe more importantly this summer?
Yeah, kind of like Coach Watkins said, here at PBL, football doesn't do anything in June anyways other than lift because we let our basketball coach have all of June. So we're just lifting all June, opening up in the mornings. So, you know, when the kids show up, like I said, they'll come and get their lift in, then they'll be able to head out. But kind of like Coach Watkins said, we share so many athletes. It's unreal. But we won't touch a football until July, which is better for us to go into the season that way anyways. But, you know, like you said, hopefully we can get rid of these masks. Hopefully we're actually able to compete against other teams and go to 7-on-7s. You know, we have a couple of those scheduled like we did last year, but obviously we couldn't attend any of those. So we're just hoping that, you know, we'll be able to see a few more teams. You know, I think we actually get to see Gibson City, which is kind of weird because we're not going to be playing them in a regular season game anymore. But, you know, at least we get to see them in the summer, I guess. But, you know, that's kind of how it's going to go for us. So I know that we'll have limited numbers in June, but I'm not worried about our kids not working out. So that'll be good for us.
John, what about you?
Yeah, so again, we do a great job of working with all of our other coaches here, and we're, from a football standpoint, we're going to take the month of May off, let those kids kind of rest and relax and heal up a little bit, and certainly cheer on all of our multiple sport athletes that we have doing, you know, wrestling and baseball and track right now, and we definitely have a ton of those kids. But like Coach mentioned, you know, we'll start back in the weight room those first 2 weeks of June, and then about that 3rd week, maybe we'll hand the pads back out and get ready for our July schedule, where we do have some 7-on-7s and a team camp in there scheduled. But, you know, even going back to what you mentioned earlier about, you know, Mike and those kids only getting 4 games, what I've noticed, and again, maybe it's the positive spin on this and the positive takeaway from this, is I kind of felt like it was the less is more approach. And literally my kids are begging me to go in the weight room right now. Like they can't wait. You know, they love the fact that we start back up in a month, and that, you know, we're three months essentially away from our first game again. And I wonder if that is because, you know, we only played 6 games and we didn't get that playoffs, or, you know, and as crazy as it sounds, I look back and I think, well, did they really truly experience the grind of the season? You know, how can you do that in only a 6-game season? So they probably are still, you know, itching at the bit to get back out there. But anyway, we'll take the positiveness, and again, like them, I know we as a coaching staff can't wait to get back out there as well.
They miss those 2-a-day hot practices.
That's it.
Mike, does it change anything for you guys this summer?
No, we've had a philosophy here for 20 years where the winter sports take June, the fall sports take July, and then you know, track and baseball and softball, they do their summer league stuff, and we don't overlap. We're like all the other coaches. We lift in June and get busy in July.
Okay. As we look forward here too, is the consensus between you guys and the coaches maybe that you've talked to that the fall will look normal?
Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those, you know, we want to think it's going to be normal, I think. But, you know, Coach Allen mentioned it earlier. I think we could have played this fall, too. And I think I was on record saying that, too. You know, and, of course, I'm the one person that lost a couple games, too. But, you know, it's one of those that, you know, we hope it's normal. But I know our coaches will figure it out. The players will figure it out. But we just hope, you know, we can get 9 in the playoffs in. in the fall. I know that's what we're preparing for, so we'll see in November next year.
Does it feel like it's trending towards that, though? I realize there's so many unknowns, and that's maybe not necessarily the fairest of questions, but, John, do you feel like it's going that way?
I truly do, and maybe that's just me being positive again and trying to put a positive spin on everything. But I do believe that, and again, I don't know that it's going to be back to 100% normal in the way things used to be, but I certainly think it'll be closer than what we just experienced this spring. And I believe that we're seeing that now with some outdoor sports, track and baseball right now going on, and wrestling being able to compete without mask on. And so again, I hope that it keeps progressing in that direction. And hopefully by August, we're back to some sort of new normal.
Lucas, any thoughts on that in the fall? I know you want it to be that way. Does in your gut get a sense that it is going to be that way?
I think so. You see all the vaccinations and everything heading in the right direction. And the simple fact that, this spring, all the spring sports, there's going to be a state series in baseball and track. I mean, that's a positive and trending, in the right direction. I just think hopefully the further we get down the road, the further we get away from this pandemic. And like I said, we just get back to some normalcy. So
and Mike, yes. Yeah, absolutely. And Mike, I don't want to put any kind of conjecture on the IHSA here, but I feel like they need this. I mean, can the IHSA even go forward if they don't get back to some sort of normalcy and have state finals in the fall?
You look at IESA, the financial hit it took. Look at IHSA, the financial hit they took. Yeah, they have to get back to having the tournaments, the regionals, and state series, because they're dependent on the financial assistance from that to continue going. Schools need it, communities need it. The restaurants need it from Friday night when people are used to going out eating there, and they're losing that revenue. So I hope it gets back, and hopefully IHSA. Hopefully the government, the health department, and IHSA all work well together.
Yeah, and that's my hope, and out of all of that, and I think that's part of my struggle with what happened, is that there was just so much of a lack of communication, or at least that's what it seemed like from my end, and I know you guys felt that as well, of what is the plan here, or even is there a plan? Do we know what's going on? And it's not trying to pass blame on the IHSA. Believe me, I know they wanted to play just as bad as everyone else wanted to play, but the transparency from the top down of our government has just seemed to be lacking in all of that, and I hope that's what we can take away from this moving forward, that okay, it may not be exactly the way it was prior to the pandemic, but can we at least have some communication from the top down so that the IHSA can guide you guys, right? I mean, ultimately, is that all you're asking for? At least I would assume, is just to have a plan and know what it is. As easy as that is to say, right? We're in a pandemic, we still are. I don't think it's just going to go away next month, but like to have some more leadership there. Is that fair?
I think it's fair, but like you said, that it's good to have a plan, but if we have to go through what we went through the last 9 months, the plan changes every time. So what's the point of putting in a plan? I understand things change, but at the same time, and IHSA has to, do what they're told from the Department of Public Health. I understand that, but it just is real weird. Like I'm 30 minutes away from Indiana, and they just got done with wrestling and they had football, and everything was fine. So we are, it's like the river, separates us, and it's like the virus didn't cross the river. So I don't know. I don't get it. Can't figure it out.
Yeah. He kind of said it right. It's kind of like we lost our week 6 game and we couldn't leave region 6 to go play a football game. So we couldn't drive basically, 45 minutes away, or 10 miles over out of our region with a team that was available, because they're 10 miles too far and we drive 2.5 miles or 2.5 hours anyways, and the one thing I worry about in the fall the most, honestly, it's not the necessarily of playing games. It's having enough refs to play the football games. I think there's going to be, we played a Thursday night game, and it wouldn't shock me if there's a lot more Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and all day Saturday games being played, just because the shortage is real. And I'm not trying to put a plug in for the IHSA or anything like that, but I think Coach Allen down there, who has to find referees and stuff like that, I'm sure, he's probably been trying to worry about that too. So chasing those around, hoping that you can get a good crew, not just a crew, to ref a pretty important football game. So,
yeah, Mike, what was your experience with that, Mike? Just trying to fill those holes.
Honestly, this year, first time we've done it, we had assigners for the conference, and so But that was tough. I know for baseball and softball, we have games the day of, the day before. Right now they're saying, hey, we only have one official, and we're going to have to play games like that. Basketball games, you saw first-year officials doing varsity games. And that's going to – I think that could do more damage to the game down the road just because they're getting those younger officials in there and not getting that experience. It's going to chase them out sooner. But having a signer was a lifesaver this year because the schedules changed all the time, and to keep up with officials and all that was confusing enough. So going with a signer was a lifesaver this year for us.
Did you guys have to maybe keep it in perspective a little bit more of, especially if you knew? And look, if an official's new, they're probably not going to tell you they're new, or at least they shouldn't. That hey, this is my first varsity game or whatever. But did you have to keep that in perspective because you're on the sideline wanting to get after it and get after them? That was a missed call, whatever else, and then maybe that's their first game.
Our coaches did a great job with that, and all the coaches did, knowing what everybody's adopted philosophy. We're happy to be out there. Yeah. We're not going to complain and fight over something small whenever. We're just happy to be there right now.
Yeah, I can just imagine from your guys' perspective trying to keep that in check, in the heat of the moment out there, especially for the kids, who the kids don't care, right? I mean, they just want to get out there and play and have fun and win the games. As we wrap up here, guys, I'm just curious of your thoughts holistically of where we've been, what we're going through now, a week out from the season here, not even a week, I guess it is. And then holistically what you take away and maybe what you'll remember, from the last year moving forward.
I hope it's something we never have to go through again, obviously. And I think I honestly feel like we're making that transition. We hear the word normalcy all the time, but it feels like, we're getting back to that, to the way it always used to be. So I just hope it's something no one ever has to deal with again. These seniors lost a lot. I mean, the kids last year, in basketball and stuff, and baseball that didn't get, their state series and stuff. So it's just something that, no kid should have to ever deal with again.
John, what about you?
Yeah, I completely agree with Coach. I don't ever want to coach football in the spring season again. The weather was crazy enough, let alone all the other things that we had to do. But you asked, what am I going to remember about this season? I think for me personally, and our program personally, was just how resilient we were. With everything. And, we as coaches talk about adversity all the time and, things are going to go wrong in a ball game and how do we adapt and overcome it. But literally life was adversity every single, like we've said multiple times today, every single minute of every single day. And so just watching these kids, these high school kids have their worlds flipped upside down and continuing day by day, minute by minute to battle through it together. And adapt and overcome through all of it, man. I'll never forget how resilient this group was, whether it was in games, whether it was practices, or whether it was, walking the halls, getting ready for practice, so to speak. So it was definitely a crazy emotional ride, but at the end of the day, I was happy for our kids.
Josh, what about you?
Yeah, like they said, I definitely don't have to do it again, but I thought the pride that our kids showed, we didn't have any kids that didn't come out for football that would have come out for football any other time anyways. So for those kids to know that they're not playing for the playoffs, but when the lights come on and they're at practice, they're taking it serious. Lights come on in a game and they just let loose. It was really nice to see the pride that those kids have and just wanting to compete and win at basically everything. And that's kind of what we tell them. We want you to be winners. We're not necessarily talking about just football. We want you to be winners. And so they went out and that's exactly what they did, just competing. But I know I definitely won't forget probably the first week or second week of practice when you saw some smiles on faces and kids actually being able to communicate with each other. And just talking football again, just being around, 60 plus people wasn't something that we were allowed to do really. So being around 60 plus people was really nice.
Mike, we'll wrap it up with you. What's your lasting memory of this rare, at least can we just call it rare? Let's never happen again spring season.
I always remember the first practice, emotional first practice, like we talked about, not knowing if we're going to get to go be out there, and then all of a sudden you get to be out there. That was special. Learn not to take things for granted. As a coach, as a players, you always tell as a coach, play it like it's your last play. Well, it was our last play almost this year. So you have to take that and get after things. But as a coach, coaching for so long, I realized that my life is very routine. I have a routine in August, June, July, August, September, and I need to break that a little because it drove me crazy. And I think we all need to do some self-reflecting and see what we need to change, what we learned from this, and hopefully grow from the experience we had. I know as a program, we're going to look at some things and see if we need to change them, and hopefully, other coaches and other programs can do that also.
Absolutely. I think we can all take something from this. And look, high school football is small, in the grand scheme of things in this pandemic, and so many, hundreds and thousands of people have lost their lives. And obviously that's most important. But getting back to that sense of normalcy was really fun to see this spring. And for these kids, this isn't college. They don't get another chance to play. There's no red shirt season, for these guys. This is it. And so, I was just really happy for all these high school kids and for you guys as coaches, for the parents, and for high school football fans that they did get this opportunity this spring. Guys, just want to say thank you so much for spending about 30 minutes here with us. Hope everyone enjoyed listening, enjoyed watching, and I know I, for one, will be looking forward to that August 27th date, which really, that's just 4 months from right now. Let's hope it's 4 months from yesterday that we can be playing a high school football game and getting back to a full 9-week schedule with state playoffs in there and everything else. So, guys, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time tonight. Be well, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.